welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a very different type of video, but I have honestly thought about doing this video for years. I'm just opening up to you guys about something that I've struggled with, something that I did struggle with for 4 years, which is a binge eating disorder, which is a type of eating disorder. I always said that if I ever got through it and recovered, that I would make a video about it. I just know that I think it's part of my message I need to spread, even though this is definitely not easy for me. You guys know I don't make super personal videos like this that often, and I've definitely been nervous about it because it's like opening up this wound. So yeah, let's get into this video. Okay, so I'm here with my life coach Kylee, and she's gonna help kind of guide the conversation.
Hi, I'm Kylee Donahue. I'm a certified professional life coach, and I've been working with Cloe for quite some time, maybe over a year.
I guess we should get started on the topic of today, which is my struggle with binge eating.
A binge eating disorder has two main characteristics. The first is eating a considerably large amount of food compared to what another person would eat within a certain time period, say 2 or 3 hours. And then the other main characteristic of binge eating disorder is a feeling of lack of control. So lack of control over how much you eat, what you're eating, or being able to stop. You know, eating more rapidly, eating when you're not physically hungry. Sometimes you might eat alone because you are embarrassed, eating until you're uncomfortably full. And then it's normally followed with a feeling of, sort of disgust at yourself, and depression, and a lot of guilt and shame, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with.
I remember when I was going through it the most, I would be looking for YouTube channels and people who had talked about it, and I feel like it's just not something that's shared or talked about. I'm gonna kind of tell you guys my story today and my struggle and how I recovered.
Yes.
So it's taken me a while to kind of figure out what it came from. I was struggling with binge eating for about 4 years. It started when I was 18, and when my mom passed away, people would bring us food all the time, and my mom's friends would always bring us food, and that was like the one thing that my sisters and I would feel happy about in the day. Like, it was a really tough time. We were all recovering and feeling so much grief, and then we'd be getting like these awesome meals. People would be bringing us like spaghetti and brownies, and like I think I maybe associated food with joy around that time, and it became something that I also used to numb myself. But it took me a long time to realize that binge eating had any emotional significance for me. For probably the first 2.5, 3 years of dealing with it, I didn't even honestly accept that it was something I was dealing with. I think I just didn't realize. It can kind of be a blur, and like you don't even know that it's something that's happening to you, which is crazy to think about.
Right, because a lot of people might think, oh, I'm just eating because I'm emotional, when if it gets to a certain level, it's actually a disorder. It can really impact your life. And it's not surprising that it also happened around the time that your mom passed, because there was a lot of emotions.
Yeah. I just remember like talking to my sister on the phone at one point and just like bursting out into tears, telling her everything, and that was a big moment of realization for me that like I actually am struggling with something. So I think there's a lot of shame definitely around it, but like just not even wanting to acknowledge that it was a thing for so long.
When you did acknowledge it, I guess, tell me about that.
For a while before I sought help about it, it was kind of just this like pattern of binging and restricting and trying to erase what I had done. So I would binge like crazy, and it would usually happen at nighttime, and I would like do it in the dark in secret, and then the next morning I would work out really intensely, and that was my way of kind of like trying to erase everything I had done. I know a lot of people purged, but I never went through that, which I'm really grateful for. Yeah, I would just work out really intensely, and it's so crazy because I can look back at this time in my life and look at the pictures of myself, and I'm probably the most fit that I ever was. So anyone who even saw me on Instagram or on YouTube probably thought I was so healthy, but I was just working out like a maniac to erase it. I think it was really hard for me to be alone. Like, that was kind of when it would happen for me the worst, and it created this like fear around being alone, and I felt really dependent on my sister because she would come and stay with me for a few weeks, and we would work out together and we would eat healthy together, and then she would leave and I would just like binge for like weeks straight, and I would gain weight so fast. Like, I would go from being really fit and gain like 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Yeah, there was this fear of being alone and a fear of like that at any moment I just was gonna have no control over it, and it was just gonna like attack me almost, and it felt like this war in my head all the time. I don't know, I felt like a victim and that I had no control. I just realized that how my body position has changed as I was talking about this.
Yeah, you're like curled up. I mean, it's just, it's traumatizing. And it's so distressing just like knowing, right, that's there, even when you were in phases of not binging, it was impacting you.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I guess people don't see and don't think about when they think about a binge eating disorder. People think like, oh, you just overeat a little sometimes. Like, everyone does that. But in my head, it was just this like battle all the time.
It's not like I'm like enjoying the food. I'm not really enjoying the food that much. It's more that I'm in this like zone where I just like can't stop thinking about food, and it sucks. It really sucks. I think like people don't understand the like how much of a mental thing it is. Like, I was trying to explain it to Sage, and she didn't understand like that it was like my mind was like such a big part of it, and she couldn't see why it was so bad that I was like binging and stuff.
So that's something that's not so quantifiable. Like, it's not something you can really track, but it's just like an overall mental state that lasted for like 4 years.
Yeah, and I remember when you'd be going through phases where you were feeling really good and working out, and then we'd sort of stop talking about it, right? And start focusing on other aspects of your life, and then it would be, you know, it would be like Cloe that's good and happy, and then after you had a binge, you were like devastated.
Yeah, it completely changed my entire like who I was and my mannerisms. I was just a different person completely when I was binging, and for me it would be in these little like spouts of a few days to a week. So I could be fine for like 2 weeks and not binge at all, and then I think something would trigger me. I would have a lot of anxiety, or something would make me really sad, and I would like go into these like binge, almost like clouds, I feel like would be a good way to describe it. The entire day would be taken up by either me binging or thinking about binging or thinking about what I was going to binge next, or trying to not think about binging. During these days, I would usually watch TV or just be on my phone all day to try to numb another part of myself. So they would kind of go hand in hand. It'd be like binge watching a show and binging and just like numbing everything.
Can you tell me like what exactly a binge looked like for you and how it felt? Because I know for different people, their eating disorders will look differently. So I'm wondering, about yours specifically.
Yeah, it was like typically revolved around sugar, and it would be this kind of process where I feel like during the binge I wouldn't acknowledge that it was a binge. And I remember when we were working through it, you would always tell me to call you or text you if I was about to binge, but like I couldn't even do that because my mind would not acknowledge that it was happening until it was over. Usually like it would start in the morning, I'd immediately feel this like need to binge, and I would try to push it away as long possible, but then it would come up. And then once it came up, it was like, I feel like I was just in the tornado. And usually, like, let's say it's with cereal. Like, I'd pour myself a normal bowl of cereal and I would eat it, and then I would instantly want another bowl of cereal. I would tell myself I don't need one, and then I would crave it, and then I'd tell myself I don't need one, and then I'd go to the kitchen and I would pour myself another bowl of cereal, and I would do it so fast and so messy, and like I feel like I was just trying to do it so fast so that it wasn't even like something that was happening, which makes no sense, but I just didn't want to admit that it was happening, and I felt like if I slowed down, maybe I would realize what was happening. And I would eat so fast too. I would like just shovel it down and then get another bowl and then get another bowl, and like it just wouldn't stop. And then finally maybe I would stop with the cereal, but I would go into something else, and then the whole day was just this like racing to get to the next food item or thinking about what the next food item was. And I never wanted to be home because I was worried if I was home and alone that I would just binge. And like I think it was really bad when I lived in my old apartment because my roommate had a bunch of like sugary snacks all over the house, and she would just like offer it to me all the time, and like being around candy for me was the worst. And we had a giant Oreo jar with probably like hundreds of Oreos in it, and I remember I ate the entire thing and I could not stop. Like that Oreo jar was awful for me. Now looking back, it seems so silly for me. It's like being an alcoholic and having a full liquor cabinet. Like it seems crazy that I would do that to myself, but I think at the time I also like there's a part of me that did really want it.
Yeah, and well also I think there's probably a part because it was food, right? It's easier to deny that it's a problem sometimes. Like, oh, it's just food. And that's actually one of the reasons why it's hard, say, with food versus other like drugs or addictions, is because it's like the only disorder where you still have to actually eat and come in contact with like your drug of choice. Mm-hmm. It would say interfere with a few of your trips, like that you didn't want to go on because you knew that there was going to be certain foods there.
Yeah, trips were really hard for me. Traveling was extremely hard, like being around kind of like a lot of foods that weren't foods that I would normally have in my house. Like even during my binging stages, once I moved into this apartment, at least all the foods in my house were foods that I considered like healthy, and if I binged in them, it wasn't the worst thing in the world because they were still healthy. But when I would go home to Florida, it was like I hated going home to Florida, and it's really sad because that's my home and that's my family. At my house in Florida, there's Nutella and chocolate and chips and just every junky snack you could think of. And after everyone would go to sleep, I would sneak down to the kitchen and in the dark just like have this crazy binge and probably eat like thousands of calories. I don't even know how much, but I would just eat until like I couldn't feel anything. My body would be in so much pain. My stomach would be like so huge and bloated, and it would last for days. Like this bloating would be like so uncomfortable, and it would last for so long. I think during the whole thing, like my mind would feel like I was in this fog, and I wouldn't want to talk to anyone. I wouldn't want to tell anyone or address that it was happening. So I just kind of like cut everyone out. Like if I was in a binging fog, I would just cut everyone out because I would feel so ashamed and embarrassed, and I didn't want anyone to see what I looked like. And I was in pain, like physical pain, which like makes you not want to go out and do anything. Yeah, going home to Florida was painful, and that was really hard because that was every holiday. Like I would go home for Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving was the worst. Thanksgiving I think is like probably the most triggering holiday for a binge eater because it's like the celebrated binge holiday. Mm-hmm. Everyone is supposed to eat until they can't move, and everyone's like making a joke out of it. Yeah, traveling was really hard, and especially then for these YouTuber trips like Coachella, or you know, if we were going to a place where I'd be in a bikini, I would restrict like crazy before the trip. I would work out really intensely, eat super clean, way undereat. Mm-hmm. And then I would get back from the trip and I would just immediately gain all the way back. It's crazy because in all my pictures, like I look like this super fit person, but those pictures were taken during the times when I was really like, I guess on the outside fit.
That you looked fine. So
Yeah.
people assume that because you look a certain way that you're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
What would lead up to it? Like, because the food, right, is just sort of like a mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. So what were the underlying feelings or thoughts before this would happen?
I think usually it would be something that was really stressing me out in some way, or a lot of times it would actually be if I knew that I needed to look good for something. Like if I was doing underwater video and I was going to be in a bikini, like I would binge for like 3 days straight before the video. Anytime I needed to look good for something, I think I would have a fear that I was going to binge, so then I would just do it anyway, just to get it over with.
Yeah, and I remember there was an overall feeling of wanting to be perfect, and you put so much pressure on yourself, you know, to work out, to film. Like, I think a lot of that also contributed to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm really hard on myself all the time with everything in my life.
Yeah, I was really intense about working out for a little, and I think in my recovery I just had to stop working out altogether. Like I would still bike and, you know, move my body, but in terms of like the intense going to the gym and like training, I had to just stop to fully recover, because working out like that would like get me back into this restrictive mindset, and then that would end up leading me to binge, and it would just like continue to be this cycle.
Yo, so I'm making this vlog for future Chloe to just know where you're at in life. You are back on track with your dieting and fitness. Today is probably like the first official day back on track, but I had kind of like a binge eating session like 2 days ago, or 2 to 3 days of like binging, but I was kind of easing myself back into like getting fit again, and today I'm on it. I might even go do a second workout, but I am also here to remind myself to not push too hard, because you know that's a trigger. Once you start losing weight, you start to get excited and you start seeing results, and you're like, oh my god, let's kick it up a notch, let's go faster, let's do more, and that's the point where you end up breaking and you end up binging. You want a balanced, healthy lifestyle with fitness, with food, and we've done this too many times to do it again.
So there was a point in my recovery where I stopped working out and I stopped restricting at all, and I just let myself like have anything I wanted. And I think that's kind of important in any like eating disorder recovery, is just you have to have that phase of like freedom almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a bunch of notes in the process when we were trying to figure out like what was leading up to a binge and trying to figure out how to like prevent it. So I'm gonna share some of those. So this was on July 10th, 2019, which I think was my last binge, at least the last recorded one, which is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I wrote, it's been a sensitive week in terms of food and my body. After cleaning out my entire closet and finally accepting that my body has changed, I got a comment on my Instagram saying I gained weight. This is the first time I've gotten a comment like that since college. And then also I had VidCon coming up, and I got really nervous that people were gonna notice I gained weight, and I had a panic attack, and then I just remember I was binging for like days. I think it was usually like it would be like something where I was insecure about my body would lead to it. This is another one I wrote. I felt really great about my body until I started getting back in the gym. I think the gym is really triggering for me. It reminds me of a time when I was super intense about my body and restricted with my food, where I was constantly obsessed with my body and had a negative perception of it. This note is when I like came into terms with that I needed to take a break from the gym, because it was like it went hand in hand for me. And I also would take a lot of videos, kind of monitoring what I was feeling, so I could look back at the videos and like understand what headspace I was in, since a lot of it was a blur.
Okay, I just had like a binge eating day session, and I wanted to do a little like video log to kind of just like, I could watch it back and like understand in the future like what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and how to stop. This past week I've probably I don't know, it's all kind of a blur right now. I feel like binging kind of does that. Like, it makes everything feel like you don't really know what just happened. I was really motivated and was eating super clean, and I was getting really addicted to it. Like, it was like almost obsessive, like the fitness stuff. When I starve myself, I just like basically end up binging at night. Like, it just happens. Like, I just end up gaining more weight than I would have if I just ate like a normal person. Today I literally went to my singing lesson, came back, and then like I can't really remember, but I literally feel like I spent the rest of the day just eating the whole day or thinking about food. Like, when I look back at today, I'm just like, I don't really even know what I did. It's not easy. I have a lot of notes, a lot of videos, voice memos. I was constantly like recording and tracking, and it's work. Like, that's what I will tell anyone who wants to overcome this, like, or any eating disorder. It's work and it's hard, and I think that's why people say that you have to really want it, because it's not easy. And it was like, it felt like a full-time job.
Yeah, and I remember, going through that process with you too, and you would be in this back and forth of, I want to stop, and this is terrible, and I don't like it. And I had told you that, until you were like really, truly ready, it would probably continue.
Yeah, I think there was so long that I thought I was ready, but then it was still such a comfort for me that I didn't want to end it. And that was a hard thing to wrap my head around, but like knowing that deep down I wanted it, and I wanted this thing that was tormenting me and was making my life feel terrible, that I wanted it, There was this one day where I had like this complete breakdown, and I remember I was crying on the bathroom floor for hours, and then I called you. I just remember thinking like, I am done. And I really knew it. Like, I knew that I was done. I'm just so tired of letting this like consume me. Like from the outside, I look completely fine. But mentally, like, what's going on inside, it's just so frustrating, and I'm so over it. And I don't want to feel these thoughts anymore. Up until that point, like, I didn't feel like I could actually overcome it. Like, I had to understand how painful it was to me.
Right, the pain of the experience has to outweigh any type of comfort or pleasure that you're getting out of it before you can truly stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember we tried like a lot of different things, and yeah, it was a long journey.
Yeah, there are a lot of different things that led to my recovery. I can't say that it was just one thing. So one of the things was journaling and understanding what led me to a binge. Another thing was just getting my mental health in check. Like, I don't think I would have had the strength to overcome this if I didn't get my mental health in a place where I felt like I was good. So that meant like doing things that made me feel good all the time, not just when I felt like I was under pressure or I had anxiety, like not waiting until the moment where I'm about to burst to go do something that feels good for me. Like, just constantly putting those things in my everyday life.
Right. It's like sort of, you can't just focus on the problem and say, oh, I'll feel better when it's not a problem anymore. It was like putting all these other things into your life, like getting outside, like you said, like journaling, meditating, even just doing things for fun.
Reading the book Brain Over Binge, that really helped me as well, because it allowed me to disassociate myself from my disorder, and it allowed me to see things from a different perspective. Today marks the day that I fully understand and make sense of my eating disorder. I am reading this book, and it has helped me understand that there's an animal brain, and the animal brain is like that voice, the voice that's telling me to eat even when I try to fight it, the voice that's telling me to go binge even when I know that it's gonna make me feel upset. And I've always said for years that it feels like I have these two voices fighting my brain. My logic voice that knows that
the binge is just gonna make me feel depressed and knows how bad it is for me. But then I have this other voice that's constantly pushing and constantly trying to get me to binge. And it feels like this fight. And this book is teaching me I just have to stop giving in to its urges, and I have to stop emotionally attaching to it. It's not me. I've detached myself from it. I'm realizing that this probably dates back from when I first started dieting to lose weight, freshman year of college, like second semester, and I started restricting what I ate for the first time. Probably the first binge I had told my body that this is a way to get food. After restricting and then having that first binge, that animal brain then perceives binging as the way to survive. It's a survival method against starvation. It all makes sense now.
And so I gave that animal a name, and I called her Monica. I would film videos on my phone, like, talking about Monica like she was this friend.
Honey, listen to me, Monica. I am not gonna fall for your little tricks anymore. You think that you can fool me that easily? Maybe in the past, old Cloe would have fell for it. Old Cloe would have given in. But not new and improved Cloe. She has worked way too damn hard for this. She has put in the time, put in the work, put in the blood, sweat, and tears. You know exactly what to say to get her to listen. Just one bite. You used to be able to get into this head, not anymore. We have played this game time and time again. We know that when times get rough, those barriers get thin. And it is easier for Monica to get in to the brain. Good luck getting in to this brain. I'm crazy.
Just like completely separating from it just gave me this like power that I didn't know I had. Like, I think I always felt like it was two people in my mind. So then reading that and confirming it made so much sense. Why I always felt like I was at war. And I always felt like there was this part of my mind that was the sane part, that was the calm part, and the one who was like, you don't need a binge. And then there's this other part that's like, food. And that was it. Mm-hmm. And the more you say no to that side of your brain, the stronger you become and the easier it becomes, and the less that side starts coming up. The more I said no, it would just kind of like slowly fade away. I think once I started doing that and saying no and tracking everything, it probably was like within like 3 to 4 months that I completely stopped binging. Mm-hmm. So that was really powerful. And then I think sugar was like the main thing for me that just completely ended it all. I realized that whenever I would have a binge, it would always be sugar. Mm-hmm. Like, it would always be surrounded by sugar. I wouldn't want anything else. Sugar does something to your brain. Yeah, sugar is more addictive than cocaine. Mm-hmm. And it's especially processed sugar. Like, fruits have a lot of sugar, but the way that a fruit is made, like, the skin of the fruit is made to help break down the sugar in like a slow way in your body. Mm-hmm. Versus processed sugar, you're like, it just hits you. Yeah, getting all of this at once. It's almost like this like drug feeling, and I think I was craving that high all the time and like chasing it. So I completely cut out processed sugar. I don't have it in my life at all. I cut it out in May, and then I had my last binge in like July. Mm-hmm. So I haven't wanted it back in my life. And that was another thing that I knew once I cut it out. Like, there was a point where I was just like, I'm done with it. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew that it was the answer I needed. Maybe for some other people it doesn't have to be that extreme, but for me, it wasn't something that I felt like was benefiting my life at all, and it was like, it was controlling me, and I don't want anything to have control over me that's not just me. Yeah, and the first probably month was really hard, but after it, like, I could look at a plate of cookies and like not feel anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is amazing. And I remember talking about that a lot, like, that once you sort of change your taste buds and the chemistry in your body, that you literally can just lose cravings. Mm-hmm. And you brought up an important topic, is that an eating disorder is similar to any other type of addiction, because your brain sort of plays tricks on you, like how your Monica was saying, just one nut. It's like an alcoholic brain would be like, oh, just one drink, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that was great that you did was, so in the beginning, right, you were denying that it was even there, but what helped your recovery was, one, acknowledging that this part of you was there, and then actually engaging it and saying no.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so important, like just accepting and even telling my family. There was a long time where the only person that knew was Mia, and then eventually I told Sage, and eventually I told my friends, and I told my dad, and like felt like a piece of it was like leaving me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like so empowering, because for so long it was something that I was so ashamed of, and if anyone found out I would be devastated, and now I'm telling the entire world, and I'm hoping it all just leaves.
Never comes back.
But yeah, it was like, I don't know, like the amount of shame I had, it's so crazy to me, because I just feel like I treat myself like so gently, and I nurture myself, and like the fact that I felt all that shame and guilt is just crazy to me, because like we're all human and we're all going through things, and like I would never view someone else the way I looked at myself.
It's important for people watching to know that a common characteristic of people with eating disorders is that they're so hard on themselves, and they're so critical, and that pressure sort of leads them, okay, I'm not perfect, so I feel shame about it, and then I'm going to eat to relieve this pressure, and then I feel even more shame, and then you start isolating, and the more that you isolate, you know, the stronger that the disorder is. So it's really about reaching out for support and talking about it.
Yeah. I remember Adeline invited me to a party, and it was like, I think maybe like a YouTube party or something, and I told her at the last minute I couldn't come, and she was so upset at me. And then that was when I finally decided, I'm like, I need to tell her that like this isn't just me flaking, it's because like I'm like in this bubble of like shame and bloating and just sadness, and it makes me feel terrible that I can't come because of this, but I feel like I couldn't tell anyone. So eventually I did tell her, and I'm like, that's why sometimes I would like last minute flake on things. It was because like I just felt so disgusting, and that no one could see me. And I didn't want anyone to see me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were hiding from yourself and hiding from other people.
Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that really helped me in recovery, which really surprised me, was getting on a very organized and detailed meal plan, which I feel like you constantly were trying to get me to do. But I went to a nutritionist, and now I'm working with him, and I always was against the idea of doing a meal plan, because I thought putting like any sort of restriction on myself would be detrimental.
Or would lead to a binge, maybe.
Yeah. But it's been such an amazing relief for me. Like, I think it's because I never have to think about when I'm going to eat next or what my next meal is going to be. I just follow the plan. I think before, in my recovery, I was still under eating, which would also lead to a binge. Like, going to a nutritionist helped me so much, and like I'm eating so much more than I used to, and I'm feeling great, and I have so much energy. I pretty much eat probably like every hour.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have like my breakfast, and then I have an hour later I'll have like a piece of fruit with almond butter, and then I have my lunch, and then I'll have like an egg or like another piece of fruit. Like I'm always keeping myself at a good fullness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never get to the point where I'm starving, which was usually what I would do. I would like maybe skip breakfast, and then when it was lunchtime I was starving and I had no control, and I would just eat everything.
Right, because your blood sugar was already so low, which is one of the reasons why meal plans are so effective, because it takes the thinking out of it, and it keeps you from getting like ravenously hungry, where, you know, your body on a chemistry level wants sugar.
Mm-hmm. There was so much like anxiety around food, and the meal plan has just like eliminated any anxiety I had around food. And I feel like I'm in such a right mind now to make decisions. Like going to a dinner party, for example, even bringing your own kind of snacks. I know for my Thanksgiving dinner, we usually don't eat lunch before, which like would lead to me eating like crazy. But I ordered myself a salad. Like, everyone didn't eat lunch, and I, like, Postmated myself a salad because I was like, I'm sticking to my plan. I'm not going to go overboard. And I had a great Thanksgiving, and I got to have so much fun with all my family. And I'm just so grateful right now that I'm in a stage in my life where I can go home to Florida and enjoy time with my family and enjoy the holidays, and I don't have this, like, giant thing looming over me. I remember there was a time where I thought that this was just something I was going to have to live with my entire life, and something that I was always going to have to be cautious about and always afraid of. And like, even when the times where I wasn't binging, like, I feel like I would just feel like this is just something I have to live with, and I'm going to live with it forever. And I can happily say that I am fully recovered, and I don't feel like I will ever go back. And I know exactly, like, what I need and what fuels me and what fulfills me and energizes me. And as long as I keep practicing all those things, like, I don't need to binge anymore. I don't need that comfort because I have it from family and from friends and from my life. So I just want to let any of you out there know that if you're struggling with binge eating or any eating disorder, that it's not forever, and you can get past it, and you just need some strength and some support and love. And I'm here for you if you need me. And I hope that this video provided something for anyone who's struggling, or just insight for anyone who didn't know about this eating disorder. And thank you, Kylee, for coming.
You're welcome.
Yes. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.